back, relax, and maybe get yourself a snack. Me and you gonna have a little chat about books. Hey guys, so I'm here today to do my February wrap up. It's already March. February is the quickest month of the year, so I wasn't sure how I was going to do with February. I was a little bit worried whether I would be able to fit as much in. But I did. I actually managed to fit way more than usually, and I actually ended up reading 21 books and then I DNF'd 4, I think. So that's quite good. I'm pretty happy with that, I must admit. I've reviewed some of them already, but the rest will be coming in review form very soon, so look out for them. So this year, I'm being way more harsh on books. If I don't like a book after a little chunk of reading it, I'm gonna DNF it. If I just feel like it's not for me, I'm getting a bad feeling, I just don't think I'm enjoying it, whatever it might be, if I'm not enjoying it for some reason, I'm just going to put it down. I don't want the added stress and pressure of trying to force myself through a book when there's so many that I do want to be reading. So I DNF'd 4 this month. That's quite a few, I know, but when you think that I read 21 others, I feel like that's pretty good. So the first one I DNF'd is this one, The Iceberg by MARION. I picked this one up because it is one of the Welcome Book Prize shortlisted ones that Eleanor and I are reading together. And I just wasn't a big fan of this one. The writing style felt very pretentious at times, and I didn't get very far at all with this. I think I only got maybe 20 or so pages, but it just didn't really interest me, and unfortunately I just couldn't connect to the writing style of this more than the story, because it is a non-fiction memoir about a wife and a husband, and the husband is diagnosed with some sort of tumour that is going to take away his speech, and unfortunately just the way it was written was really not working for me, so I DNF'd this one. The next one I DNF'd was also a Welcome Book Prize one, and this was Bodies of Light by Sarah Moss. I picked this one up again for the Welcome Book Prize, and I actually listened to this on audio, and I got a fair way through this one, but I just wasn't enjoying it. I have since spoken to people who have read her other works, and they've said that this is one of her weakest books, so possibly it wasn't a good starting place. Style of writing again was very bizarre. It just felt very over the top, very flowery. I just didn't like it. So again, I DNF'd that one and I've got rid of it. I've returned it, so I got the credit back. Yay. Another one that I DNF'd was Our Dark Duet by Victoria Schwab. I'm really not a big Victoria Schwab fan, and I bought it on Kindle and I started reading it and I just could not get into the story. I really just find it difficult to connect with any of the characters that Schwab writes in any of her series. I don't know what it is. It just, something about her writing really doesn't work for me, and I don't like it. So again, unfortunately I DNF'd this one, and yeah, I didn't pay very much because it was a Kindle one luckily, so that's fine. And then one of the other BookTube SFF ones that I DNF'd was The Collapsing Empire, which unfortunately I'm actually hosting the read-along for this. I really didn't like this. It was very political and it's set in space, and I just don't think that politics in space really works for me. It's already complicated enough with all the science for a sci-fi, and then if you add in politics too, it just gets a bit overwhelming for me, and I personally don't like that when I'm reading science fiction. I much rather would have a really great adventure or something really life-threatening and exciting. So yeah, for me it just didn't work, and I'm not a huge SCALZI fan anyway. I like his Old Man's War, the first book. That's the only one I've read in the series, but I like that. I wasn't a big fan of Lock-In, so I kind of wondered where this one would fall for me, and unfortunately it fell more on the I don't like it side than the like it side. So that is all the stuff I DNF'd. Now let's move on to all the books I did actually end up reading and finishing. So the first one I finished was the Paper Girls series. I read volume 1, 2 and 3, and I actually ended up giving volume 1 and 3 2 stars and volume 2 a 2.5. I have done a full review of this series, so if you want to know my thoughts on it then you can check it out. But yeah, it just didn't work for me. The art style, the story, none of it was really my thing. Another one of the BookTube SFF ones that just unfortunately wasn't my kind of cup of tea was Binti Home. I really want to like this series because I know so many people do, but every time I read it I just get to the point where I'm like, why is this interesting? It really doesn't work for me. I don't know what it is. Again, it could just be a writing thing where Nnedi Okorafor and I just don't get along in terms of writing style. I have read a couple of her books now and I not enjoyed most of them, so yeah, possibly that's why. I gave this a 2 stars. Moving on to the books I actually read and liked. So the first one of those is The Cruel Prince by Holly Black. This one was sent to me for review and I'm really happy it was actually, because I'd not heard about it until I got sent it, and then I kept seeing it everywhere. It just popped up everywhere. So this is a book that focuses on a fae world and two humans and their half-fae sister who get dragged back into the world of the fairies, and it's kind of their adventures there and what they do. And I really enjoyed it actually. It was a lot of fun. It definitely has some darker elements to it, and I'm going to an event in March where I'll be meeting Holly Black, so I'm really excited about that as well. So I gave this a solid 3 stars. Another one that got 3 stars from me is Everyone's an Alien When You're an Alien Too by Jomny Sun. This is a graphic novel. It's in the nominated graphic novel category for BookTube SFF, and I read this one with my partner. We actually read it aloud to each other. It's really simplified in drawing style, but it's a lot of fun to read out loud. There's many laugh out loud moments, and we had a great time reading it, so I would definitely recommend doing that. Maybe read it with a friend. It was quite a simplistic book. It does explore some big ideas, but in very simplistic terms, so I ended up giving it a 3 stars. It's very likable, but it doesn't have an awful lot of substance unless you dig really deep, so that is that. Next up, I read Fortune's Pawn. I've done a review of this one and I gave this one a 3.5 stars. It's a light-hearted, fun science fiction, and it definitely has some good moments of character development and adventure. It's quite fast-paced, it's exciting, and I definitely want to continue on with the series. A couple of other books that got 3.5 from me include the final 2 SBFBO books that I needed to read, which were The War of Undoing and The Crimson Queen. I have done a joint review for both of these, so if you want to know more about them, you can check that out. Another book that I have reviewed already and that got 3.5 stars from me is Iron Gold by Pierce Brown. This is the first in a new series by him, kind of continuing on the same world or universe from the Red Rising trilogy. But for me, it didn't work quite as well because of the introduction of multiple POV, whereas the first series was all from one POV. It was an interesting read. It definitely leaves you wanting more, and I'm intrigued to continue the series. It just didn't fill me with quite as much anticipation and excitement as the first 3 books in the first trilogy did. Next up, I have one I listened to on audio. This is The Gender Games, and this one is actually a really interesting life story of Juno Dawson. It tells about her time transitioning, and it tells how she has discovered her identity and who she is, and I really enjoyed this. It was definitely an eye-opening read. If you haven't read anything like it about transgender issues, then I'd certainly recommend it, and it is narrated on Audible by the author, so definitely one to check out. I gave this one a 4 stars. This is The Scar by China NEUVEL. I did this as a buddy read with James from James Chatham, and I really enjoyed this. I kind of buddy read it a bit from the book and then I read the rest on audio because that's easier for me to get through, and I really enjoyed this one. I do think I still prefer Perdido Street Station slightly, although I really like both of them. They're both just so weird, so out of this world, so completely different from most of the stuff you'll read because it is new weird, and I really liked it. So I gave this a solid 4 stars, and I'll definitely be picking up the final one in the Baslag series, and probably some other China NEUVEL books in the near future as well. Speaking of the genre new weird, I actually read another one that falls under that sort of subcategory this month, and that was Born by Jeff Vandermeer. This one started off completely not my thing and then turned into completely my thing. So what I mean by that is I was audiobooking this, and at first I was a little bit hesitant. I thought, oh, this is probably going to be only a 2 stars. Shall I continue? And I decided I would because it was easy reading. The narrator was doing a good job. I listened to more, and by the halfway point I got completely sucked into the story. I really fell in love with the main character Born, and I just found myself captivated, and by the end of the book I was giving it a 4 stars. So this is definitely one of those books that surprised me completely based off of the beginning and just how it changed. So I will say, if you're planning to read this one, maybe give it until about the halfway mark before you decide if you're going to put it down or continue. But yeah, I really enjoyed this in the end and gave it 4 stars, and I will be reviewing it soon. Another one of the BookTube SFF ones is All Systems Red by Martha Wells. This is the first one in the Murderbot Diaries, and I believe the sequel comes out fairly soon, but I'm really excited to have read this. It's a really good story. It focuses on the point of view of a murderbot who is kind of like an AI robot organic mixture, kind of a person, kind of a robot. It's a very bizarre combination, but they are our main character. They are genderless. They are someone who is definitely worth reading about. They are pessimistic, they are funny, they are witty, they're sarcastic and grumpy, and I really liked Murderbot as a character, so I'm definitely down to read the rest in the series when they come out. Next up is Court of Fives, which I picked up on Renee's recommendation. I'll link her Twitter down below, and I really enjoyed this. It definitely has a Hunger Games-esque feeling to it, a vibe about it, but it is also just a lot of fun. It's got some very cool twists and some great female characters at the forefront of the story. There is a love interest, but it's done quite well, and I just really enjoyed it, so I certainly intend to continue on with the series. Another one that I've read for BookTube SFF was The Waking Gods by SYLVAIN NEUVEL. I actually audiobooked this and I have reviewed it, and I do think audiobooking is probably the best way to consume this because it's narrated by lots of different people and it really separates out all the documentation and transcripts that you see in the book, so it makes it a lot more digestible and readable, and I really enjoyed this one. I thought it was a definite step up from the first book in the series and certainly leaves things open to bigger and better and crazier things in book number 3. I'm definitely looking forward to seeing what happens, so I gave this a solid 4 stars as well. There were a lot of 4-star books this month. It was a very good reading month besides the ones I DNF'd. Another book that got 4 stars from me is Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie's Americana. I definitely want to read all of Chimamanda's books now. I've read 2 by her. Well, actually I've read 3 because I've also read the tiny one that she's done that's about feminism. So yeah, I've read 3 books by her and I've really enjoyed all of them. I don't often find literary fiction writers who I can really connect with and enjoy, but she is one of them. She's fantastic. This story is all about love and heartbreak and just trying to grow up in a place that's completely foreign to you, and I really, really, really loved this, so I certainly would recommend it. And again, I have already reviewed this if you want to check that out. I gave this 4 stars. Next up, another one that got 4 stars from me is Senlin Ascends by Josiah Bancroft. I'm actually about to start reading the sequel of this because I'm really excited to see what happens next, and I buddy read this with my partner and it was a great buddy read to do. It's a little bit of a cross between a steampunk and a fantasy, and it's definitely quite classic and timeless in its writing style, and I really, really enjoyed it. It's got a lot to like. Next up, I read Blood of Assassins. I just finished this one yesterday and I really enjoyed it. It was a lot of fun. Again, it's a continuation of a series that I really, really like anyway, and this was a super solid continuation. It was just filled with action, and especially the latter half of the book was twisting and turning constantly, and the final bit was, oh, it was so good. So I gave this another solid 4.5, which is what I gave the first one. Next up, I read City of Brass, which is one of the BookTube SFF ones. This one I audiobooked, and I definitely think that was a good way to consume it. It did take me a little bit to get into it because it is a YA kind of set in the desert, and it's definitely one that takes a little while to get to know the characters and the format and the magic of this world, but once you get to around the halfway point, I think the action picks up and it just became really fast and fun, and I just found myself completely immersed, so I would definitely recommend it. And again, I gave that a 4.5 out of 5 stars. I believe this one comes out in the UK very soon, but it is already out on audio. And then finally, my favourite book of the month, which was quite a surprise, although I do love this author, so I don't know why I'm surprised, is this one, A Time of Dread by John Gwynne. I just loved this. I completely loved this. I really enjoyed his other series, the Faithful and the Fallen series, and I've just finished reading that so that I could pick up this one and go on to it. But I think this one just completely sucked me in. It's actually a shorter book than his previous ones in the Faithful and Fallen universe, and this one starts off a new series in that universe. So it follows some of the descendants of the people who we follow in the first 4 books, and it was just fantastic. It was completely filled with action. There were so many moments that I was awed by the story, the characters, the decisions that they made. It just kept me guessing the whole way through, and I really like that about fantasy books. It was well handled with all the battle scenes. There was a lot of crossover that was just completely cool, and we get a lot more magic in this one than we do in the first few books as well, so I really like that. I definitely would recommend this, and again, I gave this a 4.5, but it was very close to a 5, and I'm really excited about the next one in the series now, so I will certainly be picking that up when it's out. So that is everything I read in the month of February. Quite a long video because I read a lot of books, but I would love to hear your thoughts on all of them down below if you've read any or if you plan to pick any of them up. Thank you all so much for watching. Let me know what you're excited to read in March, and I will see you very soon. Bye guys!
Thank you for watching my video today. Go pick up a book, then come back and chat with me again.